Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person, no matter who they are or where they live. These rights include things like the right to be safe. No one should be hurt or threatened. The right to be free. You should be able to think, speak, and believe what you want. The right to be equal. Everyone should be treated the same way, without discrimination. The right to have your needs met. This includes things like food, water, and shelter. Canada has a special document called the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's like a rulebook that protects our rights. This charter says that everyone in Canada has the right to freedom of speech. You can say what you think. Freedom of religion. You can believe in whatever religion you choose. Freedom of assembly. You can gather with others. Freedom of association. You can join groups and clubs. The right to vote. You can choose who leads our country. The right to a fair trial. If you are accused of doing something wrong, you have the right to a fair trial. Here's a detailed explanation of human rights legislation in Canada, its key components, principles, scope, enforcement, and impact. Protected grounds. Human rights legislation identifies specific grounds on which discrimination is prohibited. These typically include race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, marital status, family status, disability, and criminal conviction history in some contexts. Legislation prohibits discriminatory practices such as harassment, differential treatment, denial of services, and exclusion based on protected grounds. Discrimination can occur in various contexts, including employment, housing, services, education, and public accommodations. Human rights laws impose a duty to accommodate individuals who face barriers due to their protected characteristics or needs, for example, disability or religious practices. Accommodation measures must be reasonable and aim to eliminate barriers to participation and inclusion. Equality rights. Legislation guarantees equal treatment and protection under the law without discrimination based on protected grounds. This includes equal pay for equal work, access to opportunities, and fair treatment in all aspects of life. Enforcement mechanisms. Human rights commissions and tribunals are established to enforce and uphold human rights legislation. They investigate complaints of discrimination, facilitate mediation or conciliation, adjudicate disputes, and issue remedies for violations. Principles underlying human rights legislation. Human rights legislation promotes equality of opportunity, treatment, and outcomes for all individuals, regardless of their characteristics or circumstances. Laws emphasize the importance of respecting individuals' dignity, autonomy, and rights to ensure they are treated with fairness and without prejudice. The duty to accommodate requires proactive measures to prevent and address discrimination, accommodate diverse needs, and promote inclusive environments. Legislation seeks to balance the rights of individuals with competing interests and obligations of employers, service providers, and others, while recognizing the importance of protecting vulnerable groups. Scope of application. Human rights legislation exists at both federal and provincial or territorial levels in Canada. Federal laws apply to federally regulated sectors, such as employment in federal agencies, banks, and airlines. Meanwhile, provincial and territorial laws cover areas within their jurisdiction, like education, healthcare, and housing. Some provinces and territories have specific human rights legislation, tailored to address regional needs, cultural diversity, and unique challenges within their jurisdictions. Enforcement and remedies. Each province and territory has a Human Rights Commission responsible for receiving, investigating, and mediating complaints of discrimination. Commissions also educate the public about human rights, promote awareness, and provide guidance on compliance. Human rights tribunals adjudicate disputes that cannot be resolved through mediation. They have the authority to hear evidence, make findings of discrimination, and issue remedies such as compensation, reinstatement, policy changes, and measures to prevent future discrimination. Individuals who experience discrimination can seek legal remedies through human rights tribunals, civil courts, or other legal avenues. Remedies aim to address harm, uphold rights, and promote compliance with human rights standards. Impact and challenges. Human rights legislation has played a pivotal role in promoting diversity, inclusion, and social justice in Canada by challenging discriminatory practices, fostering equitable treatment, and advancing human rights protections. Challenges include gaps in protection, varying enforcement practices across jurisdictions, delays in resolving complaints, and evolving issues such as systemic discrimination, intersectionality, and emerging forms of discrimination like cyberbullying and online hate speech. Ongoing efforts are needed to raise public awareness about rights and responsibilities under human rights legislation, promote cultural sensitivity, and address unconscious bias and stereotypes.